On a Tuesday night, Mark opened the mailbox in the condo lobby. Inside was a white envelope from the Homeowners Association, or HOA. At the top of the page were two words, Special Assessment. Underneath was the number that made him freeze, $60,000, due within 12 months. Not because Mark had been reckless. Not because of a new car. Not because of a luxury vacation. Not because of a credit card spiral. He and his wife had saved about $40,000. They had chosen a condo because a single-family home had already moved out of reach. They thought this was the safer way into the American dream. But the building needed roof repairs, foundation work, waterproofing, and structural inspections. The total bill was $3 million. Mark's share was $60,000. The home they thought they had already bought had just sent them a second price tag. And the scariest question was not, where is Mark supposed to find the money? The scarier question was this. How can a building hide $60,000 inside something that was sold as stability? This is the condo assessment time bomb. The mortgage is not the final price of homeownership, it is only the entrance fee. The condo assessment time bomb does not explode when you sign the closing papers. It sits quietly in the roof, in the elevators, in the parking garage, and in the balconies. It sits in all the things most buyers barely look at during a condo tour. On the surface, the trap feels attractive. The mortgage looks manageable. The HOA fee looks reasonable. The real estate agent calls it a great starter home. But underneath is structural liability transfer. The repair burden of the entire building gets passed from the past to whoever is holding the keys today. This is also the second price tag trap. You paid the down payment, you paid the closing costs. And every month, you pay the mortgage. But the building can still send you a second price tag. Right when your emergency fund is not big enough to survive it. A condo does not just have history. A condo has history's invoices. And to understand whose name ends up on that invoice, you have to understand the thing many buyers get wrong. A condo does not work like a single-family house. Mark thought he was buying 2 bedrooms, a small balcony, a parking spot, and the right to say, this is my home. But with a condo, you are not just buying what sits behind your front door. You are buying part of the roof, part of the elevators, part of the garage, part of the pipes, part of the facade, and part of the master insurance policy. And you are also buying decisions that previous owners voted on years before you arrived. If you own a single-family home and the roof goes bad, the choice to repair it or delay it is mostly yours. A condo is different. You own a small piece of a much larger body. If that body needs surgery, everyone in the building gets a bill. The HOA can collect money to repair the roof, replace elevators, inspect the structure, buy insurance, or hire lawyers. And depending on the state, if an owner does not pay, the HOA may be able to place a lien on the property. It may even push the home toward foreclosure. Many buyers ask only one question. Can I afford the mortgage plus the HOA fee every month? But the more dangerous question is, how many unpaid obligations is this building hiding? If the reserve fund is thin, a bright lobby can be just a fresh coat of paint over a bill that is still growing. When condo buyers see a low HOA fee, they often feel relieved. The mortgage is already tight. Property taxes are not cheap. So when the HOA fee is a few $100s lower than the building next door, it feels like a win. But that win can begin in the most ordinary room imaginable. Folding chairs, cold coffee, a few residents holding budget papers. Someone says, if we raise the reserve fund, people will not be able to afford it. The room nods, but the roof does not nod. The pipes do not nod. The concrete on the outside of the building does not nod. A reserve fund is supposed to pay for the big things. The roof, the elevators, the waterproofing, the balconies, and the facade. If residents pay into it steadily, the pain gets spread out over years. If they delay it, the pain gets compressed. Then it comes back as a special assessment. A new buyer can move in feeling proud. Then a few months later, they discover the building needs a new roof. The previous owner enjoyed lower fees, then sold before the bill arrived. The new buyer is left holding the bag for years of delayed maintenance. Online, some people call this special assessment duck, duck, goose. The maintenance bomb gets passed around the circle. Whoever sells in time escapes. Whoever is still sitting there when the roof reaches the end of its life gets the bill. Skipping reserves does not make the building cheaper. It just lets the building use concrete as a credit card. And then America had a disaster that made it impossible to pretend concrete would forgive us forever. This is where the story becomes harder to sit with, because the new laws did not appear just to punish condo owners. They appeared because a real building collapsed and 98 people died. In 2021, Champlain Towers South in Surfside, Florida, collapsed in the middle of the night. Afterward, America looked back at a chilling detail. In 2018, an engineering report had already warned about serious structural damage, deteriorating concrete, and repair costs estimated around $15 million. The bill existed before the disaster. It simply was not paid in time. After Surfside, Florida could no longer let condo boards keep postponing the problem. Older buildings began facing milestone inspections, reserve studies, and stricter safety requirements. If the structure has a problem, repairs are no longer something people can talk about next month. They become a legal obligation. At this point, you might think the new law is the villain. But that is the uncomfortable part. The law is not wrong. The engineer is not wrong. The bill is not fake. Concrete does not care that residents once voted to keep HOA fees low. The trap is that a real bill can stay hidden until the current owner is the one who cannot run. And even when Mark says, "I cannot afford this. I will sell," he has not yet seen the second door locked from the outside. Mark does what any normal person would think to do. If you cannot pay $60,000, you sell. You cut your losses. You take the pain once and get out. But the real estate agent does not ask about paint colors. She does not ask whether the kitchen has been upgraded. She asks a colder question. Is your building flagged as ineligible with Fannie Mae? To many American homebuyers, Fannie Mae sounds like a name somewhere behind the bank, behind the mortgage rate, and behind the pile of closing paperwork. But in the condo market, it can become the switch that decides whether your home can still be sold to ordinary buyers. If a condo project has serious deferred maintenance, structural safety issues, weak reserves, or a major unresolved special assessment, that project may be treated as ineligible or unavailable during loan review. The lights are still on. But for many buyers who need a conventional mortgage, that building can suddenly become something lenders do not want to touch. That is when a condo can turn from an asset into a maze. You cannot afford the bill, so you want to sell. But ordinary buyers may not be able to get financing to buy it. If the only people left are cash buyers or investors, they are not walking in to rescue you. They are walking in to buy risk at a discount. In the research, there is a case from the Boston area. A condo owner had owned the unit for about 2.5 years when the 8-story building needed facade and roof repairs. The special assessment was reported at about $150,000 per unit. When the owner tried to sell, the building had fallen into a category where Fannie Mae would not support normal financing. Imagine Mark sitting in his car outside the condo parking lot. The agent says it gently, because there is no easy way to say it. Your unit is not exactly worthless. But ordinary buyers may not be able to get a loan to buy it. Before that call, Mark thought the condo was his exit. After that call, it became a room with an exit he could see, but could not use. Not being able to pay is scary. Not being able to sell is the prison. And if you think this is only a hypothetical story about Mark, look at the people who walked into condo ownership looking for stability. Then found out that stability could evaporate right before retirement. This trap does not usually hit penthouse buyers the hardest. It often hits the two groups least able to absorb the shock. Older owners trying to keep the rest of their lives stable, and younger buyers who barely got 1 foot into the housing market. Ivan Rodriguez is one example, and it hurts slowly. He was 76 years old. He pulled money from his 401k retirement account to buy a condo outright at the cricket club in North Miami. About $190,000 for a place to grow old. No landlord raising the rent. On paper, it sounded safe. Then the building needed repairs. His special assessment rose to more than $134,000. When he could not pay, he had to sell. At one point, the condo had been expected to be worth around $350,000. In the end, it sold for about $110,000. Every price drop took away a little more of the piece he thought he had bought. Suzanne Stonebly was hit in a different way. Not one explosion, but a monthly squeeze. At Brickell Place, the special assessment was about $34,776. For her, that meant roughly $414 a month for 7 years. Layered on top of an HOA fee that was already about $853. For first-time buyers, the pain has a different flavor. They choose a condo to play it safe, because single-family homes feel impossible. Then they receive a bill for maintenance that other people avoided for years. None of these people bought a condo to get rich fast. They bought it to get a little stability. And that word, stability, is exactly what got sold back to them at the highest price. But when homeowners see disaster, other people may see contracts, service fees, legal bills, and sometimes a chance to buy cheap. When a homeowner receives a special assessment, they see a crisis. But around an aging condo building, that crisis can also become a market. Engineers get hired to inspect, contractors get hired to repair, lawyers get hired to fight. Management companies stand between panicked residents and numbers too technical for most people to check on their own. Palm Bay Yacht Club in Miami is one example that made many residents feel trapped inside the building they owned. The 27-story building entered its 40-year recertification process. Then residents saw a staggering number. The reported total cost was about $46 million. The share falling on each unit could reach about $175,000. $175,000 is not kitchen upgrade money. It is money many families would have to find just to keep living in the home they already owned. In the meeting room, the number no longer looked like a budget. It looked like a financial sentence. Residents of Palm Bay hired an independent engineer. They questioned whether the true cost could be much lower. Then they entered a draining legal fight. According to the research, the reported lawsuit later led to a $6.3 million settlement for residents over issues tied to management and fraud. To be fair, not every contractor is bad, not every HOA is corrupt. Many buildings truly need repairs, and structural repairs are never cheap. But when the bill is enormous, the language is technical, and residents are terrified of losing their homes. Power is not evenly distributed across the table. A homeowner's crisis can become somebody else's invoice. And the bigger question is not just who makes money from the crisis. The bigger question is this: how can homeownership put a family in a position where they control so little? By now, it is easy to think the problem is a bad HOA or poor management, or a few old buildings in Florida. That is partly true, but it is not deep enough. The real trap is that homeownership does not always mean control. Americans buy homes to escape the landlord. But in many aging condos, the landlord does not disappear. It changes shape. It becomes an HOA meeting, a reserve study, a master insurance bill, a state inspection, a contractor invoice, and a cold status line inside the Fannie Mae system. You can have your name on the deed. You can pay the mortgage on time. But if the building is underfunded, the roof needs replacing, the concrete needs repairs, insurance gets more expensive, inspection laws tighten, or the mortgage market pulls back, your ownership suddenly becomes conditional. This is the painful reversal. A condo is sold as an individual asset, but the risk is collective. You live inside your own unit. But your financial life is wired to your neighbors, the board, previous owners, engineers, state law, insurance companies, and the national credit system. Mark did not just buy a condo. He bought a piece of the building's past, a roof that had been postponed, concrete that had been ignored, and the old decision to say, let's not raise HOA fees this year, made by people who got to leave before the bill arrived. The system does not have to lie in one clear sentence. It just breaks the cost into pieces across decades until all of those pieces come back together as one letter an ordinary family cannot pay. So is there any way to protect yourself? Yes. But it is not the shallow advice of just read the HOA paperwork. Right now you might be thinking, so the answer is to read the HOA documents before buying. That sounds smart. But it assumes a normal buyer can read a building the way a structural engineer reads concrete. The solution is not simply be more careful. The solution is to change the question before you fall in love with the condo. Before you imagine the sofa or the view from the balcony, ask a colder question. How much future debt is this building carrying? Do not only ask about the monthly HOA fee. If the building is more than 25 or 30 years old, treat that as a yellow light. Ask what the reserve study says about the roof, the elevators, the facade, the pipes, and the balconies. Ask whether the meeting minutes from the last 2 years mention the roof, balconies, concrete, insurance, or a possible special assessment. Then ask, is there any issue with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac financing for this building? A condo does not only need to look livable, it needs to be sellable when you need to leave. Next, run an assessment stress test. If an HOA letter asked for $30,000, $60,000, or $100,000, would you have a way to survive it? If you bought a condo without knowing any of this, it does not mean you were stupid. The bomb was hidden in a language that engineers, lawyers, and banks read better than normal buyers. But even a good checklist can only reduce part of the risk. The mortgage is never the full price of ownership. So in the end, the condo assessment time bomb is not just a story about an HOA raising fees. It is a system that makes housing look cheaper by postponing the real bill. Previous owners vote to keep HOA fees low 1 more year. The building keeps aging, the roof keeps wearing out, the concrete keeps cracking. New laws force everyone to look at what had been avoided for too long. And when the risk gets big enough, the mortgage market can pull back. Whoever is still standing inside the condo gets the letter. Mark was not punished because he spent recklessly. Ivan did not lose his retirement plan because he bought a yacht. Suzanne was not squeezed because she could not do basic math. They were hit by something that had been sold to them as stability, and that is the final reversal. The mortgage is not the final price of homeownership. It is only the entrance fee. For some aging condos in America, behind that door is a bill buyers were never taught how to read. You think having your name on the deed means you own the home. But if the HOA can send the bill, Fannie Mae can lock the market, and insurance can change the price overnight, are you owning an asset? Or are you renting stability at a price that can change whenever the system decides? Today, the trap is a building you thought you had already bought sending you another bill. One envelope, one special assessment, one reminder that ownership does not always end the anxiety of housing. It just changes that anxiety into a shape with its own set of keys. But the next video gets even colder. Imagine an American family doing everything right. They can afford the mortgage. They pass inspection. They find the house. They are ready to move in. Then the agent calls and says, "Private insurance will not insure this home," not because they are missing the down payment. Because the insurance market looks at wildfire risk, hurricane risk, climate risk, and says no. They have to step into insurance of last resort like a fair plan. And the question becomes, do you really own a home if the insurance market no longer wants to protect it?